The year was 1522. The place was a small, sun-drenched island in the Aegean Sea. To the world, it was Rhodes. To the Ottoman Empire, it was a thorn in the side of their expansion, a nest of pirates and zealots that had defied them for generations. Within the walls of the city stood the Knights Hospitaller, a relic of the Crusades, hardened by centuries of holy war and fortification. Outside, the horizon was thick with the sails of Suleiman the Magnificent's armada, over 400 ships carrying an army of nearly 100,000 men. The knights numbered barely 700, supported by a few thousand local militia. On paper, it wasn't a siege, it was an execution. But history isn't written on paper. It's forged in stone, gunpowder, and the cold calculations of military engineering. To understand why this siege lasted 6 months and cost the Ottomans tens of thousands of lives, we have to look at the fortifications themselves. Rhodes wasn't just a walled city. It was the most advanced defensive machine of the 16th century. The Grand Master, Philippe Villiers de l'Isle-Adam, knew that medieval high walls were obsolete in the age of gunpowder. Instead, the knights had spent decades constructing massive, low-profile bastions and ravelins designed to deflect cannon fire rather than absorb it. The walls were up to 12 meters thick, backed by earth to dampen the vibration of impacts. Deep, dry moats surrounded the perimeter, filled with killing zones where any attacker who made it over the lip would find themselves trapped under crossfire from hidden galleries. The Ottoman Sultan, Suleiman, only 26 years old and eager to prove his worth after his victory at Belgrade, didn't just bring soldiers. He brought engineers, thousands of them, many recruited from the mines of the Balkans. He knew that the only way to break Rhodes was from below, as the massive bronze cannons, some capable of firing stone balls, weighing nearly 300 kilograms, began their relentless bombardment. The real war began underground. This was a war of shadows. The Ottomans dug dozens of tunnels toward the bastions of England, Spain, and Provence, attempting to plant massive powder charges to blow the foundations skyward. But the knights were masters of countermining. Gabriele Tadino, a brilliant Italian engineer who had smuggled himself into Rhodes just before the blockade began, developed a system of acoustic detection. He placed large drums with bells or sensitive membranes in the subterranean galleries. When the bells vibrated, the knights knew exactly where the Ottoman sappers were digging. They would then dig their own tunnels to intercept, leading to brutal, claustrophobic hand-to-hand combat in total darkness, where men fought with daggers and short swords amidst the smell of damp earth and stale air. In early September, the Ottomans finally achieved a breakthrough. A massive mine exploded under the bastion of England, collapsing a 30-meter section of the wall. As the dust settled and the screams of the dying faded, the Janissaries, the elite shock troops of the Sultan, surged forward. They expected to find a shattered ruin. Instead, they found a secondary line of defense, and the Grand Master himself, standing in the breach with his pike in hand. The knights had divided the defense of the city by langues, or languages. The English defended their section, the Spanish theirs, the Italians theirs. This created a fierce internal competition. No group wanted to be the one that let the crescent through. The assault on the English bastion was repulsed with staggering casualties, the narrow breach becoming a slaughterhouse, where the Ottomans' superior numbers were counted for nothing. Suleiman was growing desperate. The autumn rains were turning his camp into a swamp of dysentery and fever. His generals were arguing, and the morale of the rank-and-file soldiers was plummeting. The Janissaries, who had never known defeat under his reign, were beginning to murmur about the invincible knights. On September 24th, the Sultan ordered a general assault on all fronts simultaneously. This was the largest single day of combat in the siege. The air was so thick with smoke from the arquebuses and cannons that witnesses claimed the sun disappeared. The Ottomans used fire wheels, wooden frames soaked in pitch and sulfur, rolling them into the moats to burn the defenders out. The knights responded with Greek fire and boiling oil, turning the ditches into literal pits of hell. By the end of the day, the Ottoman losses were estimated at 15,000 men. The knights had lost only a fraction of that, but their supplies were dwindling, and their walls were slowly being ground into dust by the relentless Ottoman artillery. One of the most overlooked technical aspects of the siege was the use of the cavalier, a high platform built by the Ottomans inside the moats that allowed their snipers to look down into the city. The knights countered this by building their own interior towers and using mobile artillery to target the Ottoman commanders. It was a constant game of move and counter-move, but the Ottomans had a resource the knights did not: endless reinforcements. Every time a Turkish regiment was decimated, another arrived from the mainland. Every time a cannon burst from overheating, another was cast in the camp. By November, the situation inside Rhodes was catastrophic. The townspeople were starving. The knights were down to their last barrels of gunpowder. Treachery also began to play a role. André d'Amiral, the Grand Chancellor of the Order and a man who had been passed over for the position of Grand Master, was accused of signaling the Ottomans from the church towers. Whether he was truly a traitor or a victim of political rivalry remains a point of historical debate. But he was executed, further straining the morale of the defenders. Suleiman, recognizing the sheer cost of the victory he was about to buy, offered terms. This was unusual for the Ottomans, who typically demanded unconditional surrender or total annihilation. He offered the knights safe passage out of the city, with their arms, their relics, and their dignity. In return, they would hand over the keys to the island. The Grand Master initially refused, wanting to die in the ruins of the city, but the local Greek population pleaded with him. They knew that if the city was taken by storm, the ensuing massacre would spare no one. On December 20th, 1522, a truce was called. The terms were remarkably generous, a testament to the respect the knights had earned from the Sultan. They were given 12 days to pack. On New Year's Day, 1523, the remaining 180 knights and a few thousand civilians boarded their ships. Suleiman himself stood on the shore as the Grand Master's ship sailed past. It is said the Sultan remarked to his ministers, "It weighs heavily on me that I should force this brave old man to leave his home." The Siege of Rhodes was a tactical masterpiece and a strategic tragedy. It showed that even the most advanced fortifications could be overwhelmed by the sheer industrial might of a superpower, provided that power was willing to pay a blood price that would bankrupt most nations. The knights lost their home, but they had inflicted nearly 40,000 casualties on the Ottomans. They would eventually find a new home on the island of Malta, where 4 decades later they would face the Ottomans again in an even more legendary confrontation. But for now, the flag of the Order was lowered over the palace of the Grand Master, and the crescent was raised. Rhodes was Ottoman. The thorn had been removed, but the scars it left on the Ottoman military machine would be felt for a generation. This was not just a battle of men. It was the final stand of the medieval order against the modern world, a collision of engineering, faith, and the cold reality of empire. When we look at the ruins of Rhodes today, we aren't just looking at old stones. We are looking at the site of one of the most sophisticated military engagements in human history, where a few hundred men held the line against the inevitable for 6 long, bloody months.